Greetings and salutations, all you beautiful people, and welcome to another episode of Art of the Beholder, a show dedicated to all things eclectic in the world of art, where we do deep dives into deep cuts and help you understand why damn things matter. I'm your host, Novo Day, and today we're going to be talking about art in gaming, focusing on Lovecraftian, psychological, third-person roguelike shooter, Returnal. To hash it out, I am joined by Ryan Selvey of Instagram handle at EATC.Films. Welcome back to the show, Mr. Ryan.
Hey, man. How's it going?
It's going good. It's been... tell the good people, it's been too long.
It's been a long time. I've been busy and trying to juggle a busier schedule, and I've got a lot more responsibility in my business now, and a lot more. I'm on
Business
retainer.
Is booming.
Business is booming. I'm on retainer now with a couple clients. And,
hey, let's go.
Stuff's good, bro. Stuff's real good.
Well, thank you for joining us today. I knew this was going to be a perfect topic for us to discuss. This has been one of your gems. I think you've talked about it in other capacities. I think as kind of like the supporting material for in the vein of some of our other topics. So I thought this would be a perfect show to do together. Now, why are we talking about Returnal? Returnal combines elements of gameplay, narrative, and visuals like we've never seen before, creating a truly artistic experience and something that will leave an incredibly strong impression and emotional impact well beyond the end of the game. So it's one of those art pieces, like any good art, when you're done with it, it's going to linger. You're going to think about it. It's going to seep deep into your soul, and it's going to stay with you for good reason. Now, before we can discuss, of course, we all need a little background. So Returnal was developed by Housemarque and published by Sony Interactive Entertainment. It was released for the PlayStation 5 on April 30th, 2021, and it was written by Luke Moulding and directed by Harry Kruger. Now, before we can hash it out, we need a little word from our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by the novel The Entropy Sessions, a tale of loss, love, and madness in our past, present, and future relationships with technology. Find it on Amazon and as an audiobook through Audible. Your support helps us continue our journey. Now back to the show. So first things first, I want to give the good people a little overview and game synopsis, and then I want to hear your first impressions of the game when you're going through that first biome. So in the game, you play as Celine Vassos. That's played by voiceover actress Jane Perry, and it's modeled after model Anne Bayer. So Celine Vassos is an astronaut who crash lands on the planet Atropos in search of a mysterious distress signal only known as the White Shadow. You find yourself trapped in a time loop, whereas the only chance for escape is by breaking said time loop through discovering the secrets of the planet and uncovering what the White Shadow really is. So, Ryan, tell the good people what you thought.
It was hard, and I love extreme difficulty.
Really?
Yeah. Like I'm playing God of War right now and have it not on the hardest setting, but I have it on the setting up. Which
Are you a Souls guy then? Soulsborne?
So I love Bloodborne a lot. I love it. The Souls games, other than Bloodborne, I'm all right with. Like I love Nioh, and I love Nioh 2. I think Demon Souls, it's gonna sound weird. It's a little too easy.
Okay.
Now, don't get me wrong. I've died a billion times playing, but once you kind of get, it's kind of like Resident Evil. Once you kind of get the formula down, the difficulty level is scaled so low. I mean, you let them attack, you go behind them, and you stab them in the back. Like that is, you can beat every non-boss like that. You know what I mean?
Really?
So yeah. It was so it gets a little boring for me. The reason I love Bloodborne so much, other than it just being incredible, is that difficulty really doesn't apply all the time and everything. And it's also just a beautiful
looking
artistic, artsy looking game. And so anyway, I love a challenge, and I saw this game, and plus what brought me into it. So I love strong female leads. Like
absolutely,
all the scripts
like
I write,
Alien.
Ripley is
Ripley.
That is,
oh yeah.
Oh man. But yeah, man. I love strongly. So that kind of brought me towards it, and then I realized it was a roguelike, and this is, to be honest with you, my first roguelike. I never played Hades. I never played whatever other roguelike. So I think I might have played.
Surely you played some in the birth of the genre, like Diablo and things like that.
So I've never played Diablo.
Okay.
Yeah, I've never played Diablo. So
they don't have like something like Diablo doesn't have changing procedurally generated rooms, though.
Rooms, right.
It's like
And
the
I think
same for
Hades
everybody.
does. I think Hades
Hades
does.
does, yeah.
And then the Birth of Isaac, I think actually that might be a roguelike that I played a long time. I think that's what it's called, where you're like a fetus or something like that.
Exactly. Oh, yeah.
And
It's a
I
little
think that
top
may
down.
have
Yep. Oh, yeah.
that may have been the first roguelike I played, because I think that is one. But I love bullet Hellstorms, like that bullet storm kind of
Oh,
like, oh
yeah.
man, like
Bullet
you're
hell.
moving, and it's the movement, the atmosphere, the soundtrack, which I did buy on vinyl. It just all hit. And I remember playing it and being like, "Oh, is she the only voice? Like, is she the only person in this game that you're hearing?" And I think Jane Perry may be my favorite, if not my favorite, lady voice actress because of this
Of all
game.
time? Like, or right now?
I
Of
think
what
so,
you've
man.
discovered?
I think of all
Wow.
time.
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
dude, listen to how she screams. Listen to how she has this force and this drive in her voice that
There's a
really keeps you.
performance.
Yeah, that really makes me want to get out with her. But yeah, that's what really brought me in. It just hit on all cylinders. I was like, you know what? And PlayStation didn't have any damn games coming at the time, so I was like, I might as well
True.
get this one.
True, very true.
And it happened to be that this was just a masterpiece.
Yeah, and we're gonna throughout the show we're gonna dive in as to why, right? We're by the time we get to the end of the show, we're going to explain in detail why this really does stand apart from a lot of its predecessors or even contemporaries, and part of that is with the gameplay. So usually when we talk about a film or a TV show or a book or writing or whatever, we usually start with the heart and soul of what that core medium is. And in this case, with gaming, we need to talk about the gameplay, because what I think before I get there, I do want to talk a little bit about this. I think we always knew we were going to talk about a game as a full retrospective, and I didn't know which one it was going to be. And I think for my inner circle and the NDP family, I think Returnal is going to surprise a lot of people, because people are going to say, well, why didn't you do, God of War or Elden Ring or things like that? And that's what my intention for the show as well is to answer that question. Why are we focusing on this as compared to all the other contemporaries out there? And to do so, let's start with the gameplay. So we already talked about some of the things that are in the game. Really quick, I just want to give you, for any of the people out there that haven't played it, let's give a little breakdown. So there is semi-permadeath. So permadeath in games is like, instead of like saves or something where you just kind of pick up in the last checkpoint, usually a permadeath, in the worst case scenario, you are literally starting the entire game over. Now, this game doesn't have that, and for a long time, it didn't even have save features, but you start from the beginning of the act. And the game is separated into 2 acts of 3 biomes each. So essentially 6 levels total for the entirety of the game. And just like Ryan says, it's roguelike, which means that through each biome, there's a series of rooms, and every time you play it, those rooms change. It's the same rooms that you play through time and time again, and you will die a lot. The difficulty is unbelievable. It is punishing, but you will get a new experience every time you do what we call a run, which is when you die, you start over from the first biome, or the first biome for the first act, or the fourth for the second act, and you try to make it to the end without stopping. Now, to make the challenge even more vast and expansive and difficult is the R&D, which is in roguelikes, you're going to get a different weapon, different buffs, different debuffs every time you play, and it's randomized. You don't know what you're going to get. So there is an element of, that's probably my only gripe, and I know you probably have some gripes besides the difficulty, is there is an element of luck.
Yeah, so the element of luck, I would honestly say by the end of my playing experience, I was really good. Like I had it down packed of kind of how I need to move, but it was an element of luck. When I would go through, I would have a run where I would get to like stage 6 because I got lucky, and the debuffs weren't as punishing as the ones that I tried to run before.
Right.
And I was like, all right, great. Like this is great. I only have something that says I take 75% less damage to enemies when I'm standing still. Well,
Right.
you never stand still in this damn game. Like you're never standing still, because if you do,
Oh, it's
you
a run and
die.
gun for sure.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
you have to move. So yeah, the element of luck is definitely there and apparent. Also with your weapons. I mean, each weapon, and, it took me a while to realize, like, why can't I switch weapons? And I didn't realize that you really only have one weapon at a time. So you kind of have to decide, what am I going to do? Am I going to keep this pistol that I started with and power up a little bit, or am I going to get lucky and pick up this, acid spewing gun,
Shotgun.
this shotgun,
Right.
that makes enemies explode,
Or the pylon driver
or the
that
pylon driver,
makes
but
the game essentially the closest thing to an easy mode it has.
yeah. But sometimes even with that pylon gun, you get a bad version or not so great version of it. So that's the
Right.
element of luck that really was like, damn it, you know what I mean? So
And to that effect, I should add that the game, besides just being traditionally difficult, you doing a run and gun element per room to get to the end of the stage or into the biome in this case to play a boss, except for one biome, and we'll get to that in a minute. But essentially, every single biome was designed the same, but always changing with each playthrough. And the guns, again, it doesn't tell you, the game never holds your hand. It doesn't tell you that you are actually leveling up. So with every
mhm,
run and every death, the only things, there's a very few things that actually do,
stay with you.
stay with you, connect to the next run, and that is how your guns level up.
Hmm.
So with me, I was a hollow seeker guy. I kept that through once I got it, I pretty much leveled that up until it
Yeah,
was the
maxed out.
closest thing to easy mode
Yeah.
that I could get. And but yeah, it's a third person shooter, so you're always seeing the character of Celine, and it's always a run and gun. And the enemies in the game, and this is where a lot of the visuals come in, are essentially derived from Lovecraftian horror. So the monsters, the enemies in the game look like, traditional monsters, but they always have tentacles. They
Yeah, these
always
tentacles
slither.
are,
Yeah,
yeah.
they always
Mhm.
fly. And so it creates this inherent horror. Like every time I would interact with a new enemy, I got a little bit of a shiver. Like I was like, "Oh God, what are they
What
gonna
are they
throw
gonna
at
do?
me?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, what are they gonna do? And that too, and maybe this is even where the design, came from for the movie I'm about to,
Ooh,
bring up, but the
let's plug some
film,
stuff.
yeah, the film, one of my favorite Tom Cruise movies is, Edge of Tomorrow,
Oh yeah,
and
love it.
which also has the
Those are
same
the
kind of,
monsters.
those are the same monsters, yeah,
Yeah.
but I thought it was interesting that they used that, they're very similar, because if they were both kind of pulling from this Lovecraftian design, they both also have a story that involves recurring time, like time. Like he's dying
Exactly.
and coming back, and dying and coming back. And I thought that was really cool.
What's fascinating about the time loop on this one, though, is it's overlapping. So as you progress through the game, you see dead versions of yourself in the
Yeah,
game.
and hear
Instead of
from
it
her.
come
Mhm.
right, and there's always audio logs of that version of your past self's progression, and you're getting tidbits of the story as you listen to those and hear things play out and hear how that run went.
Yeah, and Luke Malding, the guy who wrote the game, kudos to that dude, because that what an amazing way to spell a story out,
Oh
to
yeah.
tell a
Oh my
story.
god, yes.
Because
Especially in this
honestly,
medium.
and honestly, you could miss a couple of those. I mean, there was some
Oh yeah.
highlights and stuff like that on your map, and you could see it. But you could miss those ones that weren't purposely put in the way of a door for you to get. But man, when you got it, you would hear Celine sometimes losing her mind.
Oh
Like
yeah.
you would
It's a
hear her.
psychological thriller
Oh,
type of story as well,
I
which we
thought that
love.
was just
I
beautiful.
know
Yeah.
you love and we love at the NDP family here. So,
Those tidbits and those pieces of story, really brought you into the mind
mm,
of
of
the
Celine. Yeah.
Selena that you're following, because there's many of them. There's many of them overlapping each other and leaving these audio books sometimes on a dead body, sometimes just laying up in a corner somewhere, and you find it and you hear like, oh man, this, like, she went through it. She was
Right.
going through it, and she's saying, I love that Celine says to herself, it's not going to be me. I got to keep going. It's not going to be me. And it is. And technically, every time you die, it's her.
Yeah, and that is the twist on the time loop trope that we see in a lot of these stories, is that these time loops overlap, and we're seeing our past version of ourselves, dead bodies everywhere in the game, and it creates another level of horror again. Like, as much as this game is definitely an action thrill ride, there is so many elements of horror thrill, like with, especially when we get to the very last biome, and we'll talk about that a little later because it's completely underwater. And I have to say that taps into a little bit of a personal fear of mine. I fear the concepts of deep water mysteries and very, very big monsters. So this has been with me since I was a little boy. So anytime there's a water level in a game, I always get a little extra tense. And especially if I'm seeing a huge, even when I'm playing like fucking Legend of Zelda.
Yeah.
Because we all know the water temples are terrible or usually suck or just the hardest.
Mm-hmm.
And not only do I fear it from a pure difficulty level, but I fear it for what unknowns it may bring. Or even thinking of like Nintendo 64, when you have that eel in Mario 64, you have that eel creature that would come out of that hole in that underwater level. And I was like, oh, and looking back on it with these like low polygon stuff, it should not be a scary thing, but I think it just taps into a human condition that we can't explain. This is a fear that a lot of people have.
Yeah, I know. I think Philip Church.
Really?
Yeah, I think he
has the same fear.
Has the same fear. Mm-hmm. He doesn't like on the water levels and stuff like that. He freaks out, or he freaked out. I don't know if he still does, but I know I had been over at his place a couple times, and there was stages. He was like, "Oh, I can't do this right now." Like, he would just have to kind of retire on playing that stage, or I'd play it or something like that. But yeah, that's the first time I ever saw someone react to it like that. And not, I remember it was back. What was the game magazine? There was Tips and Tricks, and then there was like
Game Pro.
Game Pro, yes, good lord.
I had a subscription as a kid.
So did I.
Nerd alert over here.
Yeah, I think I still have a bunch of them, like in a box, that I had before I moved to Texas. That I ran into, and it was like Gex on the front or something like that. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there was a bunch. There was like, I think there was that one. I think that was Game Pro, but there was like one that was owned by PlayStation. I think there's still the Nintendo version is still, I think, in print to this day. Like, they actually made it, or there's like a digital version of there's something there in that capacity. But if for anybody that was wondering what the fear of deep water exploration is, there's actually a name for it. It's thalassophobia. And yeah. And I definitely have a little hint of thalassophobia.
Yeah.
I'm okay with the ocean. I actually love bodies of water. That's like, when people say, are you a beach guy or mountain guy? More of a beach guy, for sure. I just don't want to do any like abyss level, the abyss that is level exploration in the sea. It's scary to me. But yeah, even so, my point is that even so, besides the character interactions with the monsters of the game as you're going through the biomes, the level design itself, like the actual aesthetics of it, the visual components are scary.
Mm-hmm.
And like everything that you put you in is creating tension and fear and anxiety, but to the point of the thrill, right? So you want to, even though you're a little scared to go around that corner or open that door, or no, because again, going back to level design, remember, this is a roguelike. So every time you go into a new door, it's going to be completely different than your last run. You don't know exactly what you're walking into, and it creates a little bit of that anxiety. And I think we will touch on this when we talk about the story, plot, and narrative. That's all purposeful, guys. So keep that in the back of your head, put a pin in that. That level of anxiety is always mirroring what the character is going through in terms of the narrative and the story and the plotting that we see through all these audio logs and stuff. But before we get there, we do have to talk about the bosses. So again, gameplay, difficulty, and this game fucking warns you. I've never had a game do this. At the beginning of the game, I remember making a note to myself of being like, that's interesting. The game literally says at the beginning, before you hit start, Returnal is a challenging experience, but that's part of it. That's part of the fun. And to me, the overall gameplay, before we go into the bosses and then go and touch on a little more of the imagery, visuals, and definitely the audio design before we go into the narrative, to me, it was like a marathon race, right? This whole game was an endurance test. I don't know how many times I could tell you I definitely did some rage quitting, but there was, for the first time in a long time, I remember being in the third biome, about trying my 6th attempt at beating Nemesis, that boss, and really giving some serious consideration to, do I just want to quit this? Like, am I having fun?
Yeah.
And then as soon as I got past that, I was like, it was one of those experiences where I was like, man, if I can beat this, I can beat anything, or I can do anything. That kind of feeling in life.
So I had an extreme amount of trouble with the first boss. Now, my really good friend Cody,
Good old Frike. That was the first boss.
man, Frike, she was a bitch, man. But but Frike was tough. But then I was like, all right, let's look at what she's doing. Let's see how she's approaching things.
Right.
And then you kind of realize that, oh, I just need to stay back. And once you stay back, the rain of terror that she sends through the sky, and then sometimes the little blast on the ground, it's like, I'm far enough back. I got this. But that was my friend never got
like after
past,
you
like,
beat that, didn't you feel this incredible sense of
oh man, well, that's what I was saying.
pride and
I told him,
completion?
I said, bro, just beat Frike, and
Like you had a party in your
will.
head, right?
Yeah, I was like, it will open up for you. And he gave up, man. But I was like, I can't be that guy. So
Oh,
I
so
ended up,
your friend completely gave up? He like
yes,
put
but
it down, never
he
picked it back
never
up
picked
again?
it back up. Yeah, he never
Wow.
played it again. And I was like, bro, once I beat Frike, I felt like I can do this. And I did. Eventually I did.
Yeah, to the players that never, to the gamers out there that haven't played this, much to Ryan's point, it is bullet hell, and then the bosses is bullet hell on extreme. So they are throwing everything in the kitchen sink at you to get those hits in, to get those kills in. And there's 3 phases to every boss. It's not like you just, see that life bar go down and you win. There's 2 more life bars right after that, and you may have an inch of life left by the end of the first phase, right? And what I had to do to, like, I got so frustrated, I went to Reddit and I was like, I've got to learn, like, what is the game not telling me? I need all the tips, all the tricks. I need, outside of literally making, doing just like cheat codes or anything. I don't think there's anything actually like that in this version, probably in the PC version that's going to come out soon. But the point is like, I looked up, I had to study. I was like, okay, what do I do? And I think the game changer for me was the dash. So guys, if you don't know this, when you use the dash feature, you are invulnerable. Nothing can hit you. Those bullets can't hurt you.
Iframes, baby.
Right. When I started utilizing that, and also the sword is essentially like a one-hit kill weapon. But that's only close quarters combat. You're going to be using your gun most of the time. But the dash is going to be a life saver. As monks, and also, again, the game doesn't tell you about how to create checkpoints in the game. You'll have to learn that out yourself. And it does at least have a save feature where you can just like pause the game without it completely breaking your run with like an update or something like that.
Yeah, that was the update, because it definitely did not have that before. So if you were there and you were doing fantastically, you either better just not play anything else until you come back to it. Like, you have to take a break or leave or go to work or whatever.
Just assume that run is over. Yeah, before the save, or pseudo save feature. So guys, people would have to play this game for 2 to 3 hours in a row without stopping, because they may have had a perfect, run. They may have had a bunch of med packs and got a checkpoint and got an astronaut figurine and all the things to make a boss or a run or a boss encounter easier, or a run easier to get to that finish line. There was no way they could put it down until they patched it. Thank God they did.
Yeah, that was something that was definitely needed. But there was, bring up Philip again. He played a little bit, I think, of my
Shout
game.
out to Philip.
Oh, Philip Church. So he was like, I don't like that you don't automatically pick up health when you run over it. And I was like, there's some strategy there.
Again, purposeful design.
Purposeful, wonderful, wonderful design, which sometimes I'm kicking butt. I got these dudes. I know these guys are going to do this. They're not hard, blah, blah, blah. I'm doing great. And there's 3 or 4 pieces of health down there. Now, there are other ways to gain health. Sometimes you have certain buffs that, say you kill someone, or say you kill something, you can gain health back that way. Or you may even have a weapon that gives you energy back or something like that. Let's just say, right? Because of that, I don't want to go walk over health and pick it up, because I may not need to. Now, the really cool thing they did with health was you had 3 little notches, and if you grabbed health while your health was already full, it added to that notch. And once you filled up all 3, your overall health would expand. And I thought, this is genius. Like, because at first I was like, am I gonna have to fight this whole game with this tiny bar? But you are building and building and building Celine and her resilience through her suit, and through her health and her armor that she has, based on the strategy that you use on each run. So sometimes when I was fighting Frike, I was like, I got Frike. I don't even need. I wouldn't want to waste time 2 hours getting stronger. But I would just go to different parts of the stage that I knew may have had health, gather that health really quick, run straight to Frike, and then go fight. And I love that the game gave you that option.
Guns blazing, buffed up through a 2-hour, essentially leveling up phase is what I would call it.
Yeah, that's how you're doing.
And then go into the fight with the best kind of buffs and med packs and essentially armor and the best gun that you could have. And then, guys, again, it's very randomized. Even the attacks are sometimes with these bosses that I would go into a boss fight with all those things. I felt like I was a fucking Superman, Batman. I was unstoppable, and I would still get killed. Like I would I would still get just slaughtered by, let's go through the list real quick. Biome 2 is, the boss's name is Ixion. Biome 3 is Nemesis, arguably, in my humble opinion, the hardest boss in the whole fucking game. Biome 4 is Hyperion. Biome 5 did not have a boss. It had essentially a series of, we'll call them trials, to get keys to get to Biome 6. Biome 6 is the underwater world, and that last boss is Ophion. Before we get, you guys have a really good primer to talk about the story and narrative. Before we get there, I do want to just highlight the incredible visuals, imagery, and audio design, because I don't know if you guys know this, and when I say guys, I'm talking to you, the audience. There is an entire community of photographers that only do video game stills. And what they do is they play the game, and a lot of games now have this as a normal feature, which is just called photo mode. And they will pause the game in photo mode and take pictures, either upload them onto Twitter or whatever, Instagram, or actually download them and then play with them in Photoshop. And I urge you all to, if you have a Twitter account or IG account or whatever, just put in Returnal and see the incredible art pieces that you will find.
It's wild that there are literal what do they call them, virtual photographers.
Yeah, exactly.
Virtual photographers. Then people are making some art, and this game is a perfect example.
It's ripe
because it is just ripe with particle effects and glowing fauna that you find around the stage.
That follows you when you walk.
Follows you when you walk past it. Yeah, and I remember.
I mean, this is 4K ray tracing at its finest.
Mm-hmm. And I remember when it happened. I was like, is that about to kill me? But it's harmless. It's just the world that they built, and it's dark and it's beautiful, and it makes
it more immersive. Like I felt like this was a fully realized world, like a Mad Max, Star Wars. Like think about your favorite world building kind of worlds, and this was that way immediately with its visual aesthetic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was. It holds up to a lot of blockbuster films and a lot of worlds that have been built that we love, like you said, and they just did such a good job. And and while the concept of being a roguelike is nothing new now, it's probably one of the younger genres, right? But the look, the aesthetic, the feel, and again, that soundtrack, man, when you get into it, like, and you're in a room and you see 8 enemies pop out of nowhere, and you hear just like this deep horn kind of come in that just kind of starts.
Yeah, it just swells.
It swells. It is great. I remember that was probably the first thing that got me, because obviously it's pretty, right? I could see that off the bat. It's hard, which I like, but man, I was like, oh, this music is great. And then her voice, again, going back to Miss Perry, Jane Perry, I think her name is. Going back to Jane Perry's voice, I was just like, God, this woman is in the studio screaming. You know what I mean? Like she's in the studio crying and shivering
and audio design, is everything. So yeah, you have, and we've talked about this in other shows, because what separates video game music from film, film or television, that's static. And when I say static, I just mean that it's only that way for that scene. Whereas in gaming, you are the character. You're playing the story, so things change on a whim, and the music is dynamic. So it has to be written in a very smart way, for as soon as you're just going through the world and exploring, and there's no enemies, you're just pure like exploration. There's a music for that, but as soon as an enemy enters the scene, it changes and it creates that action too, immediately. And as soon as you kill everybody in the area, it goes, and then it fades out to something soothing, but like very, especially for biome 1. I feel like you really feel like you're in this otherworldly, almost like tropical, forest type of feel. Or biome 4, which is just a slight variation of biome 1. And it percolates with everything too. When you pick up an item, when you use your sword to cut through brush, when you shoot your weapon, when you interact with literally everything has that very meticulous sound design. And that overall, so with all of that, the gameplay, everything that makes the gameplay, the literal aspects of the gameplay, the audio, the visual, everything, again, I think this is where we have to talk about the story. Everything is the vessel to make a compelling story. And I think this is why it stands with this one, really sticks out to me more than some of its contemporaries. Don't get me wrong, though. God of War and Elden Ring, yes, those are amazing. Those are excellent, but this one is really mirroring what the protagonist is going through. Just like we see with great directors, the visuals are going to mirror what the story is going through, what the protagonist is going through. So we need to talk about why it's a psychological thriller. So we assume that you've already played through this. If you haven't,
spoilers.
Yeah, tough titties. Yeah.
It's hard to talk about this game and not spoil because of how it's laid out.
Right. Because this is, once you were telling me about it, I could actually see it in that light, but I also could see it in multiple lights. So the game, on one hand, is essentially the main protagonists. They are going through a level of grief and loss, the loss of their son, through a traumatic situation in the real world, in our world, so to speak, not on an actual alien planet. And what you see through each biome is them going through the levels of grief and sorrow and all the stages, and them battling, and that's where you're literally battling these enemies and these bosses to get to the end, to find resolution within your own mind.
Right. So I think with the story of a woman who was doing her astronaut training, and she was planning on going probably like to Mars or something. Like it's not even.
It's not an alien planet.
It's not an alien planet. It's not anything like this. I mean, you were, and I think it was a bridge in Japan.
Yeah.
That happened. So this game is very much grounded with a real person that went through a very, very, very traumatic experience, and she blames herself for the loss of her child.
And it plays out in her mind. I think that's what the audience need to understand, so that the actual gameplay and the biomes are really going on in her mind to battle her grief.
It's how she is fighting through this grief. And we are playing this mental anguish in video game world while she's at, a therapist or hospital or however, I can't remember where she physically is while this is all going on, but this is her mental anguish and her stress. Now I do have a question.
Yes.
Did you ever read it's like the emails, the back and forth emails that you had with like a couple people? There was a couple other women.
I did not. I had to do a lot of homework post game completion to understand a lot of the things that either I missed or I didn't quite understand. And I usually would try to do all of the audio logs. And then anytime there was throughout the game, you can find what are called ciphers, and you can essentially find these little sayings or poems or things like that help to unravel a lot of the plot. The complete email threads, back and forth. I didn't, but I would try to find all those ciphers and then read all of the cipher messages.
Right. So there were, as the story progressed, there was communique between her and like two other ladies, and
Mm,
it kind of showed how she was dealing with this loss on the planet at her job, and how they
mm,
were like, "Hey, if you think you think you can still do it, being in space, being an astronaut, it's a lot of stress. This
right.
might not, with what you're going on with mentally, this may not be."
I thought she like lost a job or something like that. I thought it was something where it didn't work out. She was distraught because at the end of the game, you are finally brought down to earth, literally and figuratively, where
Mhm.
you see Celine as she normally looks, not as this, space marine essentially version of her with short hair, and she's driving a car. She has her son in the back seat. His name is Helios, for the record, which is the exact same name they give to the ship you crash land on originally, and you keep replaying and going back to the beginning, which clearly has parallels to the main narrative going on here, because the ship is named Helios, and part of the reason you're still replaying all these things in your head is because it started with Helios, your son, because you essentially, it's not quite explained what happens, but you lose control over a bridge, you fall off the bridge, and you escape. Your car plummets into water, you escape, but your son doesn't, and you blame yourself.
Right. So this is what happens. So, and this is also what ties to what we kind of hit, but didn't really hit very hard, which may kind of have lost. Well, maybe not lost anybody, but there is a figure that is following you throughout the game. Your
Hmm.
your house from Earth is on the alien planet, which is super weird that you can go into every once in a while that progresses the story. But there's also a white shadow that is following you. It's an astronaut suit, but it's an old astronaut suit, one that she refers to, that her mother used in her day. It's an antique, and it is following her a lot. Now, during the crash, what ends up happening is she falls asleep. She falls asleep at the wheel on the bridge, and there's also a recurring time like 8:16 or something like that. But that is when she passes out. But the reason she passed out is because she was so tired of training to be an astronaut.
Oh, okay.
All that training and all that stuff, trying to live up to her mom, which she kind of hits on
This
a little
extreme
bit.
exhaustion took over.
Extreme exhaustion took over, and she blames herself. It wasn't for that training. That's why she's being haunted by that white shadow, that old antique. I guess it would be actually not old for us because it was like a 2020 astronaut suit, but in
Right.
comparison to the one that she's in during the game, she refers to it as like this old one. What does it want? Why is it following me? And stuff like that. And
And
once
that
again,
is what the white shadow is, to
yes.
answer the synopsis question earlier.
So the ship that crashes, if you look at the details of the ship, yes, the ship is called Helios. When you walk away from the ship, it says abandoning Helios. Now, when you find out later in the game, really the end, kind of what happens. She crashes and she's going to drown, and she can't stay down there longer and save her son, who's in the back seat, and he's still strapped down with the
Seatbelt.
seatbelt.
Yep.
And she's like running out of breath, and she has to kind of go up. Either she dies down there, or they both, either they both die, or she has to save herself. And I can imagine for anyone that has to be an awful, horrible decision to make. Not to jump too far off, but God of War, bringing that back up, the guy who the MMA fighter that was modeled after, that Kratos' body is modeled after. He died doing that. He died jumping in the water to save his son. He died in 2020. There was actually a really touching thing that happened in God of War, to show like, in loving memory of him or whatever. But
Mhm.
anywho, so that's people that, and the one of the Glee cast members, she was like, same thing. Her son was like drowning, and she jumps into the
Hmm.
ocean and she saves her son, and doesn't make it. So I mean, like, these things do happen, and if you're, even if it is your son, sometimes you're scared and you can't do it. And she blames herself in this white shadow. Now, to go back to what I thought was very, very cool was the
Mhm.
house. It was
Oh,
always
yeah.
It was always in the first biome, and you wouldn't always get to it. Sometimes it was the first door you open. Sometimes it was the third door you go through. Sometimes it was the sixth, because that ever-changing world that this game gives you in this roguelike. But when you get to that house, you get so much of the story. You get so much of kind of who she is. You see these toys. You see the name Helios, you see this clock, you see a TV, you also start to see these news flashes. Now, every time you die, which is I thought was really cool, you get these really quick flashes of Earth. And as the player, I didn't realize it. You didn't. I don't think you realized it either. But I was like, why am I on an alien planet? And every time I die, I keep seeing the moon or trees or a bridge. And it was, once again, to the writing and the game developers, it's building this story that, like you said, once I was done, I was like, I got to look this shit up.
And the going into the house experiences too were, again, another very horror specific thrill ride, because it was designed kind of like PT. So you go from third person to first person. So you are right there in the driver's seat, and it is a bit scary, to open a door, to click on something. You don't know what's going to pop out, because it's also designed that way to be a little bit of a haunted house kind of scenario. Just like with the music, there's the very, I guess, essentially so with Tropos, for the record, we should probably dive into a little bit of the symbolism in the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this goes back to the very smart writing and very smart narrative construction, because you can still look at the game in a literal sense. Though I totally agree with Ryan. I think that this is an allegory for grief, loss, depression of losing a loved one. The way it was constructed, you could technically look at it as if she really was on this alien planet and was finding all of these things because the creatures in the game were showing them to her. Or you could do both, where it was both literal and figurative at the same time. Though I think it is truly figurative, at my heart and soul of analyzing the piece. I could see it done in any way, and that's the beauty of really smart writing and narrative construction. Is you could, if you wanted to, you could really believe she's on this alien planet and going through all these biomes and killing all these monsters and bosses and things like that, and that it doesn't have any kind of deeper meaning, or it does also within the context of it literally being played out and that you're actually on a tropos. But everything is designed to mirror what is actually happening in the patient's or in Celine's mind, because the planet is called a tropos, and that is a mythological, it's a part of the fates. It's actually the one of the goddesses of death, right? So
okay.
no,
I didn't know that about Atropos. I know about Phrike.
Yeah, it's one of the three fates. Atropos is one of the goddesses of death. So doesn't that make sense?
Wow,
You die a lot
100%.
on Atropos.
Yeah.
And then all of the boss names have mythological origins too. And I had to look this up because I didn't know that. I didn't know to what extent you knew about the family, but I did know that there was a family dynamic that was suffocating to her. I didn't know that the extreme exhaustion from that family dynamic made her fall asleep, but that makes total sense now. This is why I love these discussions. And every single, so Phrike and Ixion and Nemesis, those are all named off the mythological gods and goddesses, and those are all based on different family members in Celine's life.
So I think I know about like mom. Alex, explain, please.
Yeah. So I don't know which is which. I know that since there's so much reading and so much research we had to do for these episodes, someone like Ophion is her mother, Hyperion is her father, and then like some are either a brother or either a sibling or a child. So you are battling not only your depression and grief, but specifically through how your family haunted you and essentially drove you to this situation happening in your life. So you're battling literally your family as well. That's why. So there's two main endings. There's the one main ending where you see the giant squid monster, who is essentially kind of like a fate that you can believe, if you believe the literal version of the story, that it's actually controlling all of this and showing you all these things. or the figurative one that is the main body of why it's essentially depression and grief
Yeah.
itself,
Yeah.
incarnate. But there is a hidden ending where you see like a humanoid, tentacle like monster with a skull face that is also pregnant in a wheelchair, and you are going up to it and interacting with it, and I think confronting it. And that is, I think, supposed to be either you as Celine or your mother. And then going back to this being, you could look at the story in literal senses, because you are believed, it is supposed to be brought to your attention that you are also the white signal, that you are the astronaut and you are transported in the loop to cause the crash to begin with. So you are the beginning and the end.
Yeah, so I remember because you get a lot of that mother daughter, especially. And I don't know if you played the DLC, but they had free DLC that came out, and that actually expanded a
Like
lot of the
Tower of
story.
Sisyphus, that
Yeah.
one?
So in the DLC, not to break too far off our original story
No,
here,
break. Go ahead.
but it's you see a lot more interaction with
Mm,
her mom, and like her visiting the hospital that she's in, and her just basically being like, fuck, screw you, you know what I mean, like
right. Yeah.
and it's really really deep, and it shows that Celine was I think she had a kind of a tough life with her family.
Exactly. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I at
And
least got that.
yeah, and the loss of probably the only thing she really had that she loved, which was her kid, just drove her to the madness that has given us the game that we're playing. But yeah, Frike is what, like, the spirit of horror. Ixion, wasn't he known for like betrayal or something like that? Nemesis, it's like a divine retribution.
Right.
Hyperion is a titan of light. I know that. And Ophion, the big one at the underwater, was thrown. His fate was to be thrown into the sea. So I feel like it's just such a
So
beautiful,
interconnected.
man.
Yeah.
It's beautiful, and like I said, that the Luke Malden who wrote that, man, what a genius.
And also, just to bring it round circle and connect it with the original, like, so obviously the show is in two acts. To bring it back to that first act, which was the gameplay, remember, this is why it's so challenging, because I think, as humans, as people, we've all gone through that human condition of grief and loss, and whatever the thing is for you, it may be a little different, and maybe not the loss of a loved one. It could just be a breakup. It could be a lot of different versions of loss. And that's why I love that the gameplay mirrors that perfectly, because it is just like you are going through in your mind the trials and tribulations of getting over loss or love or whatever the thing is. It is so hard, it's so challenging. That's why the gameplay is so hard and so challenging. It's the same thing.
It was funny. I was gonna bring that point up, that when you mentioned that this is like the one of the few games that give you a warning at the beginning.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's why they were like, hey, we have to make this really hard, because ultimately it's super meta. Ultimately, what she's going through is really
It's
hard.
super hard. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
I actually remember, I'll never forget just like learning about the game before I really got into it, and learning about the biomes and stuff like that. And before I learned that there are two sets of three biomes together, I actually thought that you had to do the entire six biomes from the first biome. And I was like, this is impossible. How is anybody going to finish this? And luckily they do give you a little bit of that reprieve by separating the two. And what's great is that even is part of the narrative. So after biome 3, you actually get a distress call back to Earth. They pick you up and they save you. You live out the rest of your fucking life only to die and wake up in Atropos, and the loop starts over again, but in the new Atropos, and then you go from biome 4 to 6. And so it's still a struggle. You're still dealing with it. And it's all so interconnected. And as you said quite eloquently, very metaphysical. And I think that's why it stayed with me, is that so many of those layers, as much as like something like Elden Ring is crazy difficult, or Souls games, or Bloodborne, things like that, it's not always mirroring exactly what the protagonist is going through, or what the story is trying to uphold in its effect to the player. And I felt that was so powerful and so moving, and it really, I couldn't help but think about it for days and days. I'm clearly still thinking about it a little bit, and that's why I was like, oh, we got to do this fucking show. And it's all connected. So why don't we bring it home by telling the good people, Mr. Selvey, why should they study the game Returnal through this artistic lens?
It's so important because it is very rare that I think you get to experience something that is so real, especially through the medium of games. Like this to me was a study, a case study of how hard it is to move on. Like you said, whether that's a breakup with a friend or a significant other,
a loved one,
or
whatever the
a
thing is,
loss,
because that's technically a death. Psychologically speaking, even a breakup is a death in a way to your mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really hard for people to move forward. And yes, she did. I'm remembering she did lose. She did get rejected from the astronaut program. That's what it was. She did get rejected, and I'm sure she was going through whatever she was going through. And she may have been. I mean, we're on a. Yeah, I've thought this a couple times, but we're on an alien planet fighting monsters. This is going through, her mind probably in someone. We're seeing a much more exaggerated version, but she imagined an astronaut in the middle of the road, and she swerved out the road. You know what I mean?
And that astronaut was technically her the whole time too.
But that's what I mean. She may have just been a little just off to begin with. I think to experience something like this in the medium that it is, and it actually be good. Like, even if you don't care about the story, which would be a shame, play the game if you love a challenging, beautiful roguelike experience. But if you are down for an intriguing storyline that just has feeling and purpose, like I feel like it has to be that Luke guy, the guy who wrote it. He has to have either gone through something like this,
sure,
or has experienced it with someone, because this has so much personal
depth
feeling
to it.
Exactly. So this is exactly why you should give this game a chance. If you only have PC, give it a couple more months. I'm sure it'll be out on PC soon. If you have a PS5 and you hadn't picked it up, I think it's free if you have like the
PlayStation
Plus or whatever. Play it. Stream it, download it, whatever. Play it, man. It's damn good.
There you go, guys. Final thought is play it. And there you have it. Returnal from top to bottom. I want to thank you guys for listening. I want to thank, of course, my guest, Mr. Ryan Selvey, for helping me out and hashing things out. But before we go, we got a little extra for you, a little icing on the cake, a little cherry on top with what we call the Gem of the Week. If you're new to the show and don't know what the Gem of the Week is, it's something we like to talk about here at the end of our shows that doesn't always fit into the scheme of the episode, but we want to give it to you nonetheless. It may be on our radar in the last, day, week, month, but we feel compelled. We got to give it to you guys so you guys can dig deeper. Before we dive in, of course, you need to hear from their sponsor. Today's gems are brought to you by Zencastr. Zencastr is our go-to tool for remote podcast recordings. What's great is that you can record separate audio and video tracks, and it's all backed up on a secured cloud, so you never lose your hard work. Even better, it's easy to use, and there's nothing to download. So go to zen.ai, that's zen.ai/Art of the Beholder, or just use promo code Art of the Beholder and get 30% off your first 3 months with the Pro account. Now back to the gems. Mine, of course, is always short and sweet, so we can get back to our guests and listen to what they have for us today. I think this will hit pretty close to home for Mr. Ryan Selvey because it's a film. I greatly recommend the movie The Menu. It is, as much as the have you seen it yet?
I have not, dude. I'm so busy, bro. I've missed so many films.
Oh, you got to. I think you would love it, really. Getting to know you and kind of what your tastes are and stuff like that. So the trailers kind of make it seem like a horror film, or that they're cannibals or some shit like that.
A little bit.
It is completely the opposite of what you think it will be. There are horror elements, but if I were to truly try to name the genre of the film, it's dark comedy. It's a comedy movie. It's a dark comedy movie, but it's a comedy movie. Is there sadistic chefs that want to kill you? Yes. Is there brutal fatalities? Yes.
Okay.
Is there a thrill ride from beginning to end? Yes. But underneath it all, there's a lot of amazing social commentary, comedy, as already stated, dark comedy, and I think it will subvert your expectations. I think, yeah, the trailers make you think it's one thing, but as soon as you end it, you realize it's something else. So, guys, check out the menu.
Maybe a little bit of a shameless plug here,
Oh,
but
please.
my gem of the week is my horror short that I
Oh,
just
please,
released not too long
yes.
ago.
What's it called?
It's called Birthday Girl,
Okay.
and it is a short about a girl who is on an errand for her boss and gets a birthday gift that she will never forget. And you can watch that
On the YouTubes?
on the YouTubes, but I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of hard to find because it's literally called Birthday Girl, and that is
Mm,
just I wasn't thinking about that. But if you go to my IG,
yeah.
go to my IG EATC.Films. It is right there pinned on my page. Give it a like, give it a share. Even if you hate it, just let me know.
Oh man, I love that. Okay, Birthday Girl, Ryan Selvey, Instagram handle EATC.Films. Check it out, guys. And if you like that, of course, you can check out some of our stuff at novodayproductions.com. You can also follow us at _Novo_day, and day is DE, and at Novo Day Media. There you'll find things like the Entropy Sessions, Post Meridium, Cancel Culture Lotto, a lot more to come. Of course, you'll see more ads for this show, and you can check out some of our other episodes with Mr. Ryan Selvey. A lot of fun. I think you guys will love them. Don't forget to like and subscribe and do all the things. You know what to do. It's internet etiquette. If you like the thing, subscribe. You know what to do. I don't need to tell you what to do. Rate and review. And if you'd like to sponsor our little love child here or be on the show, you can reach out to us at novodaymedia@gmail.com. So until next time, guys, be good to each other. And as always, good luck and Godspeed. We love you.
Art of the Beholder is brought to you by Novo Day Productions. Created and hosted by Novo Day and the Novo Day Collective. Facebook.com/Novo Day Media, at Novo Day Media on Twitter and Instagram. Music by A Company. Facebook.com/ACOMusic123. ACO on Spotify. Logo designed by Tom Justice, JESTUS, of thejusticecompany.com. And executively produced by Clayton Anderson. All rights reserved.